up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking Expendables 4, or Expend4BLES, if you will. And this is the newest film in the Expendables franchise. The fourth film, obviously. I checked it out last night. I'm a fan of this franchise. I own the other three movies. They're a lot of fun. You never know which superstars are going to show up, which mega action stars will show up, whether it be Mel Gibson, whether it be Arnold Schwarzenegger, whether it be Wesley Snipes. And you, of course, know that you're going to have Sylvester Stallone. And Jason Statham is usually a key role as well. So you have these great actors, really fun action stars. These kind of movies usually, they implement some pretty funny humor, some kind of 80s style quip type humor that, they throw in there. And it's always fun. And then there's always just insane action, explosions, shooting, all that. Keep the movies about 1:40, nothing crazy, and you got yourself a nice, quick, fun action movie, okay? And so far, I can watch all three with some level of enjoyment or quite a bit of enjoyment at times. So I went to this one thinking we're gonna get about the same thing, and I honestly, I did up my short on it, and I was pretty disappointed. I didn't think this one was that great at all, really. It does have the action I'm talking about, and I think the main saving grace for this movie and why I could watch it again and enjoy it is some of the super violence in some of the firing of the shots. You see the blood coming out the back of the heads. You see lots of body parts and stuff like that. So they really amp up that. And I kind of appreciate that. I think they kind of took a page out of the John Wick franchise and some of the kill shots there. But hey, it's more realistic like that way, even though some of it didn't look that realistic. And I'll get to that. But at least the violence is really stepped up. It's bloody and it's kind of no holds barred when it comes to that. The story, very, very basic. And what they tried to do with, I guess, was supposed to be interesting with this movie didn't really work for me because it was really obvious. And I'll get to that when I talk about spoilers in a minute, because I'm going to have to, because it's really hard to talk about this movie without getting into spoilers. But there really was nothing too exciting or interesting about it. I thought Jason Statham was pretty good in this movie. I'm a fan of his. I like most of his movies. And so he was all right in the movie. Definitely has the charisma and everything to take a lead role. He's done it before, but when you kind of take over a movie that you kind of expect guys like Stallone's definitely the A-lister here. And so Jason Statham, when he's kind of in his shadow, it's a little different. But I still enjoyed it personally. I just think a lot of people are going to have problems because Sylvester Stallone doesn't have the screen time as Jason Statham does in this movie. Jason Statham actually kind of takes the lead role in this movie. And unfortunately, the rest of the cast didn't have a whole lot to do or say that was interesting. Megan Fox was okay in this movie. Dolph Lundgren is in the movie, but he doesn't have a whole lot of lines. And he doesn't really have a vital part, a major role to play. So I like seeing these guys, but you have a lot of new faces. 50 Cent is here. A lot of younger people are here. Makes sense to an extent, but we're moving further away from the original concept of this movie. We're moving away from the original concept of this action movie that has all these 80s action stars and some 90s stars, and we're going like a bunch of new faces, a bunch of 20-year-old, 30-year-old. Now, I don't know how old 50 Cent is, but definitely he's around my age. He's a little bit older than I am, but I mean, he's in his 40s, so he's not like, he wasn't a big star in the 80s and 90s to my recollection. Maybe he came to prominence in the late 90s, I'm not sure, but a relatively new star. So we don't have the 80s action stars all getting together and banding together in this one, which is kind of the whole concept of this franchise. On top of that, like I said, very thin story. The movie is extremely predictable. I saw every twist coming a mile away, pretty much every single one. At least the ones that were supposed to be surprising and that were supposed to be mind-blowing. I mean, not at all. I mean, come on. I'll talk about it here in a minute, but there was no surprises here at all, at least not for me. Now, maybe some people in this movie might work for me, nary a surprise in this movie as far as the plot goes. And like I said, it just paper thin, okay? Nothing really interesting. And also the comedy was just not there. This was the least funny. There was attempts at it. In fact, there were too many attempts at it. They kept trying to be funny and it just wasn't funny at all. And the actors, the line delivery didn't work. Like, it was just not there in this movie. This movie wasn't funny. I didn't laugh not one single time, not once. And that's fine if you're not trying to be a funny movie, if you're just sticking with action, but when you're trying to be funny constantly, that's not a good thing. So they're trying to be funny, trying to make jokes. The other three I've laughed. There's some are funnier than others, but I get at least a couple laughs out of the first three, not this one. So not funny at all. Not an interesting plot. Also, the CGI, the special effects, sometimes are pretty good and sometimes it's terrible. There's moments where green screen, I'm like, oh my God. Don't get me wrong. I mean, obviously I could do a better job than I can do, but they also have millions and millions of dollars to work with. I mean, the effects were terrible. Absolutely terrible at times. There was a moment when Jason Statham was talking to Megan Fox, I think, and the green screen was just, I was like, oh my God, I can almost see the outline of the green coming. I mean, it was so bad. I mean, it's just one of those things where the lighting, you can just tell it's a green screen. I mean, that's fine for a YouTube video, but for a big budget film like this, Expendables 4, what's going on? So yeah, I don't want to even notice a green screen. And so I definitely did. So there were some problems there as well. So really, this movie's just not good. It's not a really good movie. You can find some entertainment value in it and some fun with it. And I enjoyed Jason Statham. And I enjoyed the action film, the action shots. And luckily, the film was short enough that, it didn't totally bore me. By the time I was about ready to walk out, it ended. So I'll give it that. Like, if this was a 2-hour, 2.5-hour movie, this would be straight up bad, straight up terrible movie. Let me give you my score for this one, and I'm going to talk about a couple spoilers. I'm going to say this movie, it's not that good. But if you are bored, see it if you're bored, because it does have some entertainment value to it, in my opinion. And if you're a fan of the first three, you might as well watch the fourth one and the fifth one when it comes out. So I'm going to say see it if you're bored. But I wanted to get into some spoilers. Spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. If you haven't seen it, or if you don't plan to see it, or if you don't care, here we go. The film's main reason to even be interesting, I guess, is because they kill off Barney, Sylvester Stallone's character, early in the movie, supposedly. And they stretch it out for a while. I mean, he's dead for a while. They have a whole tribute to him and everything, and they go on like he's dead, and they go on this mission to, avenge his death, which would be pretty interesting, except I know the whole time he's not dead. You know the whole time he's not dead. The way that he was killed off made it obvious, as if they would have killed off this kind of a character in the fourth movie without him having some final words, without some emotion attached to it. He just crashed a plane. Jason Statham went to check on the plane. There was a body there, and you couldn't see his face. You couldn't see anything proving it was him, but a body. And he was in that plane, but that there's going to be an explanation later, and there'll be a flashback explaining how that happened, which you kind of figure out someone else he planted in there, and he jumped out the plane. And that's exactly what it showed, which I knew the whole time. I will admit there was a point when it kept going on, and a couple of times I think to myself, no way, he's really dead. Because it was stretching it so far. I thought he'd be back sooner. That's the one thing. I thought he'd be back sooner, but he wasn't. He wasn't back till the very, 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 very end. So I knew he'd be back, and I knew how he'd be back, and I knew the explanation. I thought he'd be back soon enough to have a final action scene with Sylvester Stallone, which I guess technically that was the case, but the action scene was like this fast. It was over before you knew he was back. So, and then the movie just wrapped up like this, done. I was like, damn. I wanted the movie to be over, like I said earlier, but they didn't really have a good ending. It just ended. Sylvester Stallone showed up, boom, boom, boom. He killed the bad guy, who was Andy Garcia, and that was it. Movie was over, and then they had a shot in a bar to wrap things up, which lasted a whole 5 seconds. So, yeah, that was so predictable and obvious. I just had to point out, like, the whole time it was so obvious. So we knew if the filmmakers expected us to watch this and think Sylvester Stallone was actually dead and then surprise us when he came back, then that's just pathetic, because I don't think anyone watching this movie really thought Sylvester Stallone was dead, unless you have never seen a movie, unless you had never seen any of the Expendables movies. You really didn't know he was a key part of this franchise. Or, I don't know what, maybe, I'm sure it tricked a few people, but by and large, I don't think so. I mean, this was obvious. So, at the end of the day, this movie doesn't have a whole lot to offer. Just see it if you're bored. Other than that, just wanted to get into that spoiler alert right there, even though I think most people watching it will know right away Sylvester Stallone's not dead. They even had, like, a moment, by the way, there was paperwork that came to light that helped them in their mission, and Megan Fox's character was like, man, if there's one thing good that came out of Barney's death, one good thing is that these documents were unclassified with his death. And I was like, oh, there you go. There's the reason he faked his death. Thank you so much. That was obvious, and that happened too. So everything in this movie was just like very, very predictable. Nothing but some a little bit of dumb fun and entertainment, and some bloody kill shots in this movie. That's literally all this movie has to offer. See it if you're bored, and that is being very generous. So let me know what y'all think, though. probably the worst in the franchise, I would say, without a doubt. But y'all have a great day. Hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe, and we'll see you next time.